The world is in ruins. After a great cataclysm, sunlight has been permanently obscured by a thick shroud. A handful of men survived the apocalypse and wandered, looking for shelter among the ruins. Eventually they found starlight, mountain peaks where the sun pierced the shadows. Mankind grew once again, shaping its daily life around the sun god and fear of darkness. A caste system was established. This is the world of Dark Earth. Sombre Terre, a post-apocalyptic setting crafted by game developer Kalisto and tabletop publisher Multisim. Kalisto was founded by Nicolas Gomez in 1990, when he was only 19 years old. He is known for being very tall and coming to the office wearing rollerblades. Around 1994, Gomez became friends with Guillaume Le Pennec, a journalist from the video game magazine Tilt. Tilt was like computer gaming world in the USA. It was the first milestone of the French video game press. In the 80s, it covered everything from pinball machines to arcade and computer games. It died a slow death during the 90s. Seduced by Le Pennec enthusiasm, Gomez asked him to join Kalisto and create a Silmarillion-like Bible for a new game setting. Heavily influenced by Jules Verne, John Carpenter, and Katsuhiro Otomo, the project quickly took shape to become Dark Earth. Kalisto is mostly remembered for games such as Furies of the Tinies and the Nightmare Creatures series. On a sadder note, it is also known for its spectacular death in 2002 in the midst of the internet bubble crisis. But Dark Earth, while vastly advertised in France, did not make a huge impact. And to me it's a shame. The game was translated in English, of course, but there are some interesting elements I would like to share. Let's talk about the story first. You play as Arcan, a fire guardian living on a starlight Sparta. This caste acts as guardians of the temple, and elite warriors of the starlight. Life is good, until thugs attack the Sun Seer, the High Priest. Arcan saves the day, but also ends up infected by the chancrescence, the raw substance of all the stuff from the dark. Your whole body takes on a ghastly appearance, and your face is, well, nurtured by a very meek healer. Our afflicted hero learns that the contamination will spread until he becomes a chancre creature himself. His only salvation might come from the Ranka, a being of light, and the natural opposite of the chancre. Unfortunately, it is fast asleep, deep, under the starlight. Of course everyone wants you dead, and a conspiracy is trying to bring Sparta down from the inside. You will need all your wits and allies to solve this crisis. Dark Earth plays like most old-school survival horrors. You know the drill. 3D characters in pre-rendered environments, tank controls, and a lot of funky camera angles. The mystical battle between light and dark also exists in the game mechanics. You can toggle between light and dark mode at any time. Those modes shape the way you interact with your surroundings and others. Light mode makes Arcan act all diplomatic and composed. It's a great way to avoid combat, since people might be sensible to your arguments.
It's all right, guard. It's me. I won't bite you.
No, but you're different. Don't take it personal. But how do I know if you're telling the truth?
Dark mode, on the other hand, makes you act like an asshole. Some people need tough love. And it also triggers more crazy or desperate actions, like breaking out of a cell, or jumping into a huge chasm. It's also pretty funny to play a bipolar character.
Go down and report to your post immediately.
Ha! Who managed to get the great Sunseer out of bed at the crack of dawn?
Who? Oh, watch your tongue, Guardian.
Last but not least, combat mode is mostly melee-based and copied straight from Alone in the Dark. Each directional key gives you a specific attack: slashing, pushing, dodging, etc., etc. Some scarce firearms called spitters are also available, but you might want to keep them for special occasions. The last interesting inherent mechanic is the taint system. You have a black bar around your life bar. The higher it is, the uglier you will look. If it's filled, you get a game over. It's mostly time-based, but acting like a dick won't help either. There are some ways to decrease the process, but the clock won't stop ticking until the very end. But there is more to Dark Earth than just a video game. Shortly after hiring Le Pennec, Gomez realized that making artists and writers work together in the same space would be beneficial. Kalisto thus set up an atelier d'écriture, full-time writing, setting, conception department under the leadership of Le Pennec. It was an unusual move, and some game journalists made snarky comments about it. The result was tons and tons of concept art and documentation. At the same time, through a Bordeaux game store, Gomez met with Laurent Veil, CEO of tabletop publisher Multisim. Dungeons & Dragons and Vampire the Masquerade are well known, but non-English speaking countries also have strong tabletop scenes. France isn't an exception. Veil was intrigued by Dark Earth concept and eventually published a tabletop RPG based upon it. He relocated his entire company to Kalisto's offices in Bordeaux. The Dark Earth RPG lasted through 2 editions and 10 sourcebooks, which is fairly large. It had reached a cult status among RPG aficionados. It sold out very quickly and has been impossible to find for many, many years. It's a well-designed setting and very close to the video game. It's mostly conceived as an initiation setting, where young men and women venture into the dark to reach other starlights or uncover ruins of before. It's also very mystical, since many secrets are hidden all over the world. The eternal conflict between the chaotic forces of Chancre and the Ranka life force isn't supposed to be as obvious as it is in the game. It's more of a hidden and mythological thing. Theme-wise, it always reminded me of Earth Dawn, Shadowrun's sibling game. A few years later, a second edition appeared, nicknamed The Era of Contact. Taking place only 10 years after the first edition, it brought a ton of changes to the setting. The personal quests turned into large-scale conflicts. Starlights were now connecting with each other, and the conflict between the Chancre and Ranka became public knowledge. Huge-ass alliances were formed through the world. Steam vehicles were introduced, and half-human, half-Chancre characters became a thing. Yeah, it's almost like it was a different game. The reason I'm telling you all this is because the video game was supposed to have a sequel. Gomez was maintaining good contact with Japanese companies. Nightmare Creatures 1 would eventually end up published there. Circa 1995, we had a new president in France, and his prime minister was Alain Juppé, Bordeaux's mayor. Having set shop close to the tunnel, Gomez was fast to jump on the presidential trip to Japan to promote France's business. There, he made good contact with lots of developers, but financially, it came down to 2 potential partners, Squaresoft and Enix. He eventually chose Square. The Japanese developer was very interested in producing Dark Earth's sequel. At the end of a long meeting, Square's internal and judiciary chief, Junichi Yanagihara, said, "Our deal is simple. We want to produce the game that you will develop by yourselves. But we want Nomura-san as the character designer." Thus, Tetsuya Nomura and his producer went to live for a few months in Bordeaux, and from time to time, Square's official came by. I quote Gomez in his autobiography. "At the office, we are making progress on Dark Earth 2, renamed Edge of Chaos. Nomura-san, the mythical Final Fantasy character designer, set up for good with the team. but the collaboration appears to be tricky. He does not speak English, nor French, and inversely, the team does not know any Japanese, or barely any English. Morale is sinking. Our differences in approach create a lot of frustration. We go from technology to build game mechanics, while Nomura-san goes from image to build the game experience itself. Thus, we have conceived plenty of models and animation for his concept art for our hero. Unsatisfied with the result, he arrives one morning with a new drawing. The hero is now carrying fallen angels' wings. Aesthetically, it is amazing, but it shakes down our very production, and weeks of content have been destroyed. Still, not everything was gloomy. While visiting, Sakaguchi's team was very impressed by the close town of Saint-Emilion, which became the inspiration for another late Square production, Vagrant Story. By the end of 1999, everything starts going south. Age of Chaos was painfully delivered to Square, but then Spirit Within happens, and Square never published the game. Some assets were reused on Nightmare Creatures too. It's around the same time that Darker 3, or the real Darker 2, start to be conceptualized by Le Pennec and his team. Information is very scarce on this project, since Kalisto went under a short time afterwards. Apparently, it took place in a different starlight, with lush vegetation and huge steam machinery. This little heaven was supposed to be the background of the story. I feel like an obvious relationship links this project and the second edition of the RPG. I mean, what's better for a sequel but to leave a lonely starlight and venture in the sky on a zeppelin? Or to reach an Egyptian starlight built on an ancient pyramid? Or glowing magical trees and all sorts of weird stuff? If it kept the eerie post-apocalyptic vibe of the first one, it would have been great. Until the very end, Gome tried to diversify the Darker franchise to cross-media. Gome mentioned that through the publisher Mindscape, a US animated series was briefly pitched. When he realized that the whole thing looked like He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, he quickly backed out. More interestingly, through Brad Rentrop, longtime friend and former LucasArts law advisor, Gome was able to meet with Steven Spielberg in 1997. For a time, Kalisto was considered as a partner for DreamWorks Interactive. Seeking new ways to make profit, Gome ended up selling darker novel rights to the British publisher Penguin, and even made a deal with Ridley Scott's company to make a HBO miniseries. The deal was eventually cancelled, since Scott was busy working on Gladiator. While super common in Japan, cross-media marketing wasn't big at the time. I mean, in 1997-2000 period, the French video game industry had only like 15, maybe 18 years under its belt. When you think of it, by trying to make novels, RPG, TV shows, cartoon, etc., Kalisto was really ahead of its time. Because less than 10 years later, Ankama would take on the Japanese media mix concept with huge success. And don't get me started on Lapin Crétin and all that jazz. In 1999, Square and Vivendi wanted to assimilate Kalisto into their midst, but Gome, like many people at the time, went public. And well, Kalisto basically crashed and burned in 2002. You know this as the internet bubble crisis. People started investing and speculating on eccentric internet startups and realized that they weren't going to get their money back. Kalisto waited for investment that never came and ended up knee-deep in debt. There were also some shady business practices going on at the time. Basically, Gome and the Kalisto administrator were accused of giving false numbers regarding the company's health. Massive trials followed, and many people still think of Kalisto as an Icarus figure in the French video game industry. Growing too big, too fast, before crashing down. 12 years later, Kalisto has been officially cleared of any legal responsibility. But yeah, it's obviously too late. But the result is the same. No more Dark Earth, and no more Nightmare Creature 3 either. Apparently, Nightmare Creature 3 was supposed to be published by Ubisoft, but the thing was quietly stifled and lost in the limbo. Note that in his autobiography, Gomez says the nicest thing about Yves Guillemot, from giving him pro tips when he started the company to helping him money-wise in the very end. Like in Dark Earth, some of the Kalisto crew survived and created new companies like Asobo Games, which still thrive today. Gomez is doing well for himself, having worked a long time for the Lagardère mobile branch, founding Mimesis Republic, and now working for Microsoft. Oh, and he wrote a book about his story. If you read French and like game trivia, it's pretty sweet. There are some funny anecdotes about people from the industry, like being stuck with Bobby Kotick in an elevator trying to haggle for Dark Earth distributions rights, or visiting Game Freak just before Pokémon released and forcing Satoshi Tajiri to stop playing Nightmare Creatures at the end of a 1 hour long meeting. So as usual, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and see you very soon for another new tidbit of information on French video game history.